Hello, Laura. Thank you so much for taking the time and for joining us today for
Well,
the alumni interview. To start off, could you tell us a little bit about yourself? Who is Wura and who are you?
so my name is Wura Ayodele. I'm a feminist lawyer and women's rights activist. I have worked as a feminist lawyer and activist for the last 11 years now. And my focus has basically been on women's rights advancement in Nigeria. I should have said also I'm from Nigeria. Um, and my work has been mostly around that in local communities. I work in both rural and urban communities. And this is mostly because I feel that women in these areas do not have their voices amplified enough, and they have their rights trampled upon as much as it gets. Over this period of time, I have um, made my voice known around women's rights and what it should look like in terms of legislation in the country where I am, Nigeria. Also, in terms of community practices, what this should look like. Because I am also a feminist lawyer, I have walked around promoting feminism for everyone in terms of ensuring that women, have their voices amplified and respected, by communities. So, well, that's just a summary of who I am and what I represent. I represent the voices of every woman who cannot speak, or every woman who can speak but cannot be heard.
So the next question is around your involvement with STAND and how you've gotten here today. So I'd love to hear how you first got involved with STAND and your journey with STAND as an organization.
So I first got involved with Stand in 2024, 2023 actually. I think towards the end of 2023. So I saw there was a call for applications for Changemakers Academy, and I wondered, oh, this is fantastic. I'm a change maker. I always love to be involved in things like that. And so I applied for this and I got involved at that point. I joined the Changemakers Academy. It was a fantastic experience for me. I was able to share my lived experiences as an activist. But beyond that, I was also able to learn quite a number of valuable lessons from Stand itself as an organization and from the participants who are right there at the Changemakers Academy. I think for the very first time, I was able to go back into what home represented, what home meant for me, and kind of just dig deep into conversations around why I started the work that I do and why I am who I am now. One of the notable things that I remember right now, honestly, was one of the first sessions we had. We were asked to bring something that represented home to us, and something that, stood out for us is something that made us do the kind of work that we were doing, or kind of brought around the interest that we had or wanted. And for me, I remember bringing a scarf. And I said that reminded me a lot of home, because that reminded me then, of course, of my grandmother and my mother, who are both feminists and both activists. And that was really a powerful moment for me, because for the first time I actually thought deeply about my history and how that got me to that point. Going forward from that moment was powerful. I was able to engage in coming up with anti-racism programs for people in Ireland, for students in Ireland. But it wasn't just that, it was working with other people, meeting a group of people first who understood me and who were kind of like-minded, who had the same passion, the same power, the same energy. It was a lot in just one small space, one small time. Always I've always regretted that it ended the way it did at the time, but it was really powerful. And that's how I came to get involved with STAND. After the Changemakers program, I have been involved with STAND again, going back to have a conversation with the current Changemakers. I'm not sure if they are done yet or not, but I've had that conversation with them about my work, how I started, the struggles I had, the challenges I had, the ideas I had, and how I was able to bring that into reality. And just that 1.5 hours, of conversation with the change makers was extremely amazing. I remember after that, I mean, there were some change makers who were crying. Some walked up to me, some hugged me. It was amazing, just being in that community was really good. And so that's been my experience with Stand. It's been an amazing, fantastic journey. It's really helped shape my life and the work that I now do now in 2025.
Um, Perfect. Thank you so much. And just kind of, you've answered most of this question already, but now over a year has passed since the beginning of, well, you and I's rendition of the Changemakers Academy together. What has that impact looked like for you now, and would you recommend the program to someone else?
Of course, I would recommend the program a million times over. But I would just definitely tell you why. It's been a year after my experience during the Changemakers program, and I can tell you that a lot of the learnings I have taken from the program have been extremely helpful to my work. Some things that I wanted to expand on, even in my current work, I took some ideas from the things we learned. We were taught basically how to bring our ideas to life. Sometimes you have an idea and it's just so huge, you don't know the first place to start, you don't know how to break it down, you don't know how to get it started, you don't know who to be in touch with. But the very valuable learnings that I got from Stand were really helpful to me, to take new ideas that I hadn't explored before, even in my work, and see how I could really engage with those ideas. Again, one of the very valuable things I learned during the Changemakers Academy was how to get people, to support your idea, to be interested in it. And that has been really helpful and valuable to me. I've been able to do that a lot, and that's really helped my work. But let me just talk about myself professionally, even as a person. It's really helped the way I view ideas, the way I engage with concepts, the way I select or pick things that are valuable and I discard those that are not. And all of these things I learned during my time during the Changemakers Academy. So the last 1 year has been amazing, and I cannot wait to see what the other years will be like, still engaging, with the learnings from the Changemakers Academy.
I'll now shift over to talk a little bit more about your work in women's rights and working for and with women, and also to your work to advocate for the elimination of gender-based violence. So this is your primary area of work. I would love to hear what led you to campaign for this issue in particular and what that journey has been like for you.
Amazing question. There are quite a number of things that led me into this. Well, one of the things I learned during Stand again is focus on one story. So I'm just going to focus on one. Um, so I engaged with I lived in a place when I started my practice as a lawyer. I lived in a place that had a lot of child marriage, mostly. And it was really disturbing to me to see girls who were below 10 years old being married off. Prior to that time, of course, I had engaged with women who had experienced violence at different points in their lives and different times. But seeing those girls who were now mostly maybe teenagers, and just not understanding what their future, looked like, and just, having the culture there supersede everything that they ever wanted, basically, it was just really stressful for me. And I thought, no, I think I need to change this. I met a number of women there who also kind of encouraged me, who I just kind of started having conversations with, and I felt if I can change one person, then I can change a whole lot more. At the time, I was not focused on gender-based violence as it is now. I was focused on just one part of it, basically, which was child marriage, but not just that, also sexual abuse, domestic violence. Well, now today that has expanded a lot more, but that was how it started. And I started having conversations with women, with girls, with young women, about what they wanted to do. It wasn't just conversations, it was also a lot of teaching and learning for them, solving whatever problems it was that they had. And of course, then I also thought, well, they needed a place to go. And so I started a women's shelter at a time. And this has also been really helpful to me, over the years because that passion that I had at the time is not gone away because I saw that this was changing the lives of women. I knew how they were before and I could see that there was a drastic change, They were not the kind of people that they were before. So this was really, really powerful for me. That was how I started. Why I continue to do what I do is because, like I said, it changes the lives of women. It makes them more confident. It makes them more powerful, helps them to use their voices more, helps them to understand the rights that they have, and it helps them know how to uphold it as much as possible. Today, the work that I do is much more expanded. I run an organization that has different operations, which includes a women's shelter, legal services, medical care, um, housing, employment services, empowerment programs for women, research and documentation, women's research and all that. It's a lot more, and of course, advocacy. It's a lot more than I ever envisaged that I would do in this line of work, but it's been extremely rewarding. And ultimately, it's just been great, to see that um, women in, like I said at the beginning, I focus on women in local communities. The women in local communities um, can have a life different than the lives that they had imagined they would have.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much, Wara. I would love to hear, I know a little bit about your work personally, but maybe for our wider audience, I would love to hear what project or specific achievement in your journey of advocacy for women's rights that you are most proud of that you would like to share more about.
Absolutely. I'm just going to talk about, in terms of advocacy, advocacy for me has been all round in my life. So it's been from traditional media to social media to actually going into communities to have conversations with not just with women, with men, with everyone in communities, with stakeholders, with community leaders, with youth leaders, with religious leaders, with traditional rulers, with people who hold the power to influence, their communities, to let them understand what the issues are when it comes to women's rights and when it comes to gender-based violence against women. And that's been a huge part of my work. I've gone to so many communities doing this, gone to the markets, gone to churches, gone to mosques, gone to schools. I mean, that's been the core of my work. But beyond that, one of the greatest achievements has been honestly having a women's space, a women's shelter, a safe space for women. That is, I would consider that one of the greatest challenges, greatest achievements and greatest challenges also for me because it is something that is not popular. Even up till now, it's not popular. It was something that I hadn't seen anywhere. I hadn't seen a sample. I hadn't seen a prototype anywhere, but I knew that was something I really wanted to do. I created that basically based on the lived experiences of the women that I was meeting and the actual needs that they had. Um, and this, of course, did not come without backlash from communities. So there were several backlashes, several statements from people basically at the time. And even now, really, people would just say, oh, she's creating that because she doesn't want women to get married. She doesn't want women to stay in their homes. She's against marriage. She's against the culture. And so that was there was a lot of that, going on there. But I would say that it's been the most helpful to women. It's easy to tell a woman to leave when she's experiencing abuse, but many people never think of where she needs to go, how she needs her voice to be heard, how she needs support. And there's so many things that a woman has to think of. She has to think of a home, she has to think of money, she has to think of her children if she has children, she has to think of her health and all of that. And so having the space has kind of solved a lot of those problems for women. A woman can now think of a place to go. And now I'm not just talking about women facing domestic violence, even women who experience sexual abuse, or any other form of abuse, they have a space to go. And being somebody who is in the center of that can do that, I think it's just amazing. I said earlier, I'm currently sitting in a women's shelter here in Nigeria, and we are the only women's shelter in the state where we operate. We serve basically millions of people. That is an achievement that honestly I don't think anyone right now can beat. And so it's amazing to be able to be that person that provides that kind of support for women. So that's been my greatest achievement so far.
Amazing, Wura. Thank you so much for sharing. Before I ask our next question around International Women's Day, I'm going to read a couple of statistics. Um, so these are the stats. The first one is that 35% of women in Ireland, which is more than one in three, have now experienced psychological, physical, and or sexual abuse from an intimate partner. In the world, one in three women worldwide experience physical or sexual violence, mostly by an intimate partner. And finally, worldwide, every day, 140 women and girls are killed by an intimate partner or other members of their family. I read these statistics because International Women's Day is approaching, and I would love to hear from you, who's an experienced activist and advocate for women around the world, what you believe are the most urgent actions that either individuals or communities can take to address gender-based violence.
Thank you for that. And honestly, I think the statistics were extremely important to mention so people understand that it's not a figment of our imagination when we say that women experience violence the most. It's actually the reality of things, in the world. For communities, what actions do they need the most? One is, I would say people need to be involved. They need to see this as a fight that is not just for a group of people somewhere, as a fight that involves everyone. No one can sit on the fence when it comes to gender-based violence. Everyone needs to be involved in addressing it. Um, and I wouldn't say it's because I'm an activist or it's just the way I'm not wired. When I walk on the street, if I hear a woman screaming, I immediately turn to see what's happening. Sometimes, well, it's turned out to be nothing, but it was still good that I turned to see. I tried to find out if she was fine. This is something that I think everyone in every community needs to do, be careful, and be sure that, the next woman to you is fine. Um, be aware of the situation. Gender-based violence is a crisis. It's a pandemic. Everyone needs to be aware, of that and to be involved in understanding what those issues are. Again, I must also quickly add that patriarchy sits at the bottom of gender-based violence. And so understanding and realizing this is really important. Many women will never seek for help because they're afraid of stigmatization. They're afraid that they will be excluded from whatever it is in their communities. Women should not be afraid of exclusion because they want to use their voice. They need to be able to use their voices without fear. And so it's the responsibility of everyone in every community to ensure that this is happening. And I'm not just talking about women who are, adult women, because the fear for women begins from childhood. It begins from when the girl is born and when she's growing, right? Her voice is silenced, you know. So that is something that everyone needs to do. And how can we do this? If you see something, say something about it. Don't be quiet about it. Report to somebody, report to the right authorities, report to a group that can provide support to the person that you're seeing. It's very important. Some families, some people have women in their families who are experiencing violence, but no one is talking about it because it's believed that she'll figure it out, she'll find a way around it. It's not that easy when it comes to that. Family members, people within communities, within schools, within religious organizations need to come and support um, women, you know, who are experiencing violence. That's one. Second thing I'm going to just mention is the fact that the law must work for us. It's not enough to have a law that is not that cannot be implemented or that has a very slow pace, you know, for implementation in a way that frustrates victims or survivors and they're not able to get justice. The law must work in a way that is fast and it gives justice speedily to people who, you know, have suffered some form of harm. And so that's another thing I think I would say, you know, I know we're constantly talking around policy, you know, advocacy and the fact that we need more and more policies to be enacted, and that's fine, or more and more laws to be enacted, and that's fine. But how are those laws being implemented in terms of, you know, providing support? If a woman needs an order, for instance, a barren order, how easy is that to get? You know, it's almost like passing through the eye of a needle, you know, to get some of these things. And it's really, really, really frustrating for the women. Ultimately, this means that if one woman doesn't get justice, no one else gets justice because people might lose faith in the justice system, and that becomes a huge problem. So that's another thing that I think it's really, really important that people need to focus on. And the final thing I would just say when it comes to people, the actions people can do is do not cover up perpetrators. Perpetrator can be a sibling, can be somebody you know, somebody you love. But the more we cover perpetrators, then the more gender-based violence increases because then there is no punishment coming, and there has to be a punishment for these acts. These are not acts that should just be overlooked. These are crimes. And when a crime has been committed, then the punishment that follows must follow. And so it is the responsibility of everyone in every community to ensure that if you know someone who is committing violence against a woman or who has done that, ensure that that person gets punished. It's not just for that person alone, it's to ensure that we protect, you know, other people who might be likely victims from that person or, you know, who might be victims from other people who are encouraged to continue acting that way, you know, because the other perpetrator was not punished. These are the tips I'm just going to give. And there are a lot more, of course, but of course, for time, I'm just going to stop here.